Let's begin with a truth about human behavior that many people overlook. What someone truly feels or desires is rarely expressed through words alone. More often, it appears through a quiet, almost invisible language, one made up of eye contact, small gestures, tone shifts, and subtle changes in energy. When it comes to connection between two people, especially in the early stages, this silent language becomes even more powerful than anything spoken out loud. Imagine a setting in a typical American city. Let's say Chicago. A 32-year-old man named Daniel meets a woman named Emily at a casual rooftop gathering. The music is low, conversations are scattered, and nothing about the moment seems extraordinary at first glance. Yet beneath the surface, something is already happening. Not through grand statements or obvious flirting, but through small, nearly unnoticeable cues. This is what most men miss. They focus on words. They listen for clear signals like, "I like you," or "I want to see you again." But real attraction, rarely announces itself that way. Instead, it shows up quietly, revealing itself through patterns of behavior that are easy to ignore if you're not paying attention. One of the most powerful of these signals begins with the eyes. You've probably heard the phrase, "The eyes are the windows to the soul." It sounds poetic, but in reality, it's deeply rooted in psychology. Eye contact is often the first doorway into emotional connection. A quick glance means very little. It's polite, normal, and expected in social situations. But when someone's gaze lingers, when they keep returning their attention back to you, that's when things begin to change. In Daniel's case, he notices that Emily doesn't just look at him when he speaks. Her eyes stay on him a moment longer than necessary. Even when the conversation shifts to others in the group, her attention subtly returns to him. At one point, her gaze briefly drops before coming back up again, almost as if she's catching herself. None of this is dramatic. None of it is obvious. But it's consistent. And that consistency is what matters. Attraction is rarely about one single moment. It's about repeated signals that form a pattern over time. Emily may not say anything directly, but her eyes are already communicating something her words haven't caught up to yet. Now here's where most men make a mistake. They either overanalyze one small sign or completely ignore all of them. They look for certainty in a single action instead of recognizing the bigger picture. But real understanding comes from observation, not assumption. Let's go deeper. Another layer of this silent language appears in proximity and attention. When someone is drawn to you, they naturally position themselves closer. Not in a forced or obvious way, but in subtle shifts. They angle their body toward you, lean in slightly during conversation, or find reasons to remain within your space. Daniel begins to notice this as well. When Emily speaks to others, her body still angles slightly in his direction. When she laughs, she leans forward, not away. When the group moves, she somehow ends up near him again without it feeling planned. These are not coincidences. They are expressions of comfort and interest. And here's something important to understand. Comfort always comes before connection. A person doesn't move closer, physically or emotionally, unless they feel safe enough to do so. That sense of safety is the foundation of attraction, not something that comes later. What makes this even more interesting is that these behaviors are often unconscious. Emily isn't thinking, "I'm going to lean closer now to show interest." Just happens. Her body responds before her mind fully processes why. This is why silent signals are so powerful. They are difficult to fake and even harder to control. But recognizing them requires patience. In modern dating culture, especially in fast-paced environments like big American cities, people often rush interactions. They look for quick answers, immediate clarity, or instant validation. But the truth is, meaningful connection doesn't operate on that timeline. It builds slowly, through repeated moments that seem small on their own but become significant when seen together. Daniel doesn't interrupt this process. He doesn't rush to label it or force it into something it's not. Instead, he stays present. He observes. He responds naturally. And that's where many men separate themselves. The goal is not to decode someone like a puzzle, or to manipulate their reactions. The goal is to understand what's already being communicated, and meet it with awareness and respect. Because when you truly understand this silent language, something shifts. You stop guessing. You stop chasing clarity through words alone. And you begin to see what was always there, hidden in plain sight. This is just the beginning. The eyes may open the door, but they are only one part of a much larger story. As we move forward, you'll start to see how other behaviors, like touch, posture, and tone, build on this foundation and reveal even deeper levels of connection. And once you recognize these patterns, you won't just hear what someone says. You'll understand what they truly mean. Now that we've uncovered how eye contact and subtle attention create the first layer of connection, let's move into something even more revealing: physical behavior. Not in an obvious or inappropriate way, but in the small, everyday gestures that quietly signal comfort and growing interest. Let's go back to Daniel and Emily in Chicago. As the evening continues, their conversation becomes more relaxed. The noise around them fades into the background and something shifts, not dramatically but enough to notice if you're paying attention. This is where many men still rely too heavily on words, missing what is happening right in front of them. Because the truth is simple. People often express connection through touch long before they ever say it out loud. Now let's be clear. This isn't about bold or intrusive contact. It's about small natural moments. A light tap on the arm during a laugh. A brief brush while moving past each other. A quick adjustment of a sleeve or collar. These gestures may seem insignificant, but psychologically, they carry meaning. Emily, for example, laughs at something Daniel says and lightly touches his forearm for a second. It's quick, almost unnoticeable, and she pulls her hand back immediately. A few minutes later, as they shift positions in the group, she brushes past him again, this time slightly slower. Individually, these actions mean very little, but together they form a pattern, and that pattern tells a story. In psychology, these small touches are often referred to as proximity testing. They're a way of gradually reducing distance and seeing how the other person responds. It's not planned. It's not strategic. It's instinctive. Emily isn't thinking, "I'm going to test his reaction." She's simply responding to how she feels in the moment. Her comfort level is increasing, and her behavior reflects that. What matters most is not just the touch itself, but how natural it feels. When someone is not interested or doesn't feel comfortable, physical distance is maintained. Movements are more guarded. Contact is avoided. But when interest is present, those invisible barriers begin to fade. Daniel notices this, but he doesn't overreact. He doesn't suddenly change his behavior or try to escalate things. Instead, he remains calm and grounded, allowing the interaction to unfold naturally. This is important because forced responses can break the flow of connection. Now let's talk about something even more telling: body language. If there is one thing that rarely lies, it's posture. When a person feels at ease and engaged, their body opens up. Shoulders relax. Arms uncross. Their stance becomes more receptive. It's as if their entire presence is saying, "I'm comfortable here." Emily begins to display this as well. At the start of the evening, she stood with her arms loosely crossed, occasionally checking her phone, her body angled slightly away from the group. But as time passes, that changes. Her posture softens. She turns more directly toward Daniel. Her arms rest naturally at her sides, and her movements become less guarded. She even tilts her head slightly when he speaks, a small but meaningful signal of attention and curiosity. Again, none of this is dramatic, but it's consistent. And consistency is what transforms small signals into clear patterns. Another detail many men overlook is direction. Where the body points often reveals where the attention truly lies. Even in group settings, a person will subtly orient themselves toward the individual they feel most connected to. Daniel notices that even when Emily is speaking to others, her feet and torso often angle back toward him. It's subtle, but it happens repeatedly. These are not random movements. They are indicators of focus and interest. Now here's the key point. None of these signals should be viewed in isolation. A single touch, a moment of open posture, or a slight lean doesn't automatically mean anything on its own. But when these behaviors appear together over time, they create a clear picture. This is where emotional awareness becomes important. Instead of rushing to conclusions or trying to figure out what everything means immediately, the goal is to observe without pressure. Let the interaction develop. Let the patterns reveal themselves. Because attraction is not a single action, it's a sequence. And when you understand that, everything changes. Daniel doesn't interrupt the natural rhythm of the moment. He doesn't question it or try to control it. He simply stays present, responding authentically, matching the energy without forcing it. This creates something powerful, mutual comfort. And mutual comfort is the foundation of deeper connection. As the night continues, the space between them feels smaller. Not physically, but emotionally. Conversations flow more easily. Laughter becomes more natural. The interaction no longer feels like two strangers talking, but two people gradually understanding each other. This is how connection builds. Not through dramatic moves or perfect lines, but through small repeated signals that create trust over time. And here's something worth remembering. People rarely say, "I feel safe with you." They show it. Through the way they stand. Through the way they move. Through the way they allow you into their space little by little. Understanding this doesn't mean you take advantage of it. It means you respect it. Because real connection isn't about pushing boundaries. It's about recognizing when they are naturally lowering. In the next part, we'll go even deeper into how communication shifts. Not just physically, but emotionally, through voice, tone, and the way someone chooses their words around you. And once you see that layer, you'll begin to understand not just how attraction looks, but how it feels. Now that we've explored how eye contact, touch, and body language quietly reveal growing interest, it's time to look at something even more subtle, but just as powerful. The way a person speaks when they feel a deeper connection forming. Let's return to Daniel and Emily. By this point in the evening, their interaction has already moved beyond surface-level conversation. What started as casual small talk has slowly evolved into something more personal, more engaging. But the shift didn't happen because of what was said, it happened because of how it was said. This is where many men miss the signal entirely. They listen to the words, but they don't pay attention to the tone, the rhythm, or the emotional quality behind them. And yet, these elements often reveal far more than the words themselves. As Daniel continues talking with Emily, he begins to notice a change in her voice. Earlier in the night, her tone was neutral, friendly, but reserved. The kind of voice you use when speaking to someone you've just met. But now it's different. It's softer, warmer, and more expressive. There's a slight playfulness in the way she responds, a light teasing edge that wasn't there before. At one point, she jokes about something he said, smiling as she does. It's not just humor. It's connection. It creates a shared moment that belongs only to the two of them. This is important. When someone begins to adjust their tone around you, it often means they're becoming more comfortable and more invested. Their voice becomes a tool, not just for communication, but for creating closeness. Emily starts asking more thoughtful questions too. Not just "what do you do?" or "where are you from?" but questions that go a bit deeper. She asks Daniel what he enjoys outside of work, what motivates him, what kind of experiences he values. These questions are not random. They show curiosity. And curiosity is one of the clearest signs of genuine interest. But there's another layer to this, how she responds to his answers. Instead of giving quick replies or shifting the topic, Emily listens. She reacts. She builds on what he says. When Daniel mentions a hobby, she follows up with details. When he shares a story, she stays engaged, asking questions that show she's paying attention. This kind of interaction creates emotional depth. And emotional depth is what separates casual conversation from meaningful connection. Now let's talk about compliments. Most people are used to surface-level compliments, things like, "You look nice," or "That's a cool jacket." These are polite, but they don't carry much weight. They don't require real attention or understanding. But when someone begins to notice deeper qualities, that's when things change. At one point, Emily says something simple but meaningful. She tells Daniel that she likes the way he explains things, that he makes ideas easy to understand. It's not about his appearance. It's about how he thinks. This kind of compliment reveals something important. It shows that she's not just seeing him, she's observing him. And observation requires attention. Attention requires interest. Many men overlook this because they're waiting for more obvious signs. But in reality, these subtle acknowledgments often mean far more than direct statements, because they come from a place of genuine awareness. Another key detail is exclusivity in communication. As the night goes on, Emily begins to create small shared spaces in the conversation. Inside jokes, references to earlier moments, little callbacks that only the two of them understand. These moments may seem minor, but they serve a purpose. They create a sense of connection that feels personal, separate from everyone else around them. It's no longer just a group interaction. It's becoming something more focused, more intentional. Daniel doesn't force this process. He doesn't try to impress or dominate the conversation. Instead, he stays present, responding naturally, allowing the interaction to develop at its own pace. This is where confidence shows, not in control but in calmness. Because when you're comfortable with yourself, you don't feel the need to rush or prove anything. You allow space for the other person to express themselves. And that space is where real connection grows. Now let's look at one more important signal: consistency. Anyone can be warm or engaging for a few minutes. But when these behaviors continue over time, that's when they become meaningful. Emily's tone remains soft and engaged. Her questions continue to show curiosity. Her responses stay thoughtful and connected. This consistency reinforces everything Daniel has already noticed through her body language and behavior. It confirms that the interest isn't random. It's intentional, even if she's not consciously aware of it. And here's the key takeaway. Attraction is not built on one big moment. It's built on many small ones. Moments where tone softens, where attention deepens, where words carry more meaning than they seem to on the surface. Understanding this doesn't mean you analyze every detail or try to control the outcome. It means you become aware of what's already happening. You listen not just to what is said but to how it is expressed. You notice not just actions but patterns. And most importantly, you respond with authenticity, because real connection cannot be forced. It can only be recognized and nurtured. As the evening begins to wind down, something has clearly shifted between Daniel and Emily. What started as a simple introduction has grown into something more engaging, more personal, and more meaningful. But there's still one final layer to understand: the way someone behaves when they seek more time with you. When they intentionally create opportunities to continue the connection beyond the moment. And that's exactly what we'll explore next. Because sometimes the clearest sign of all is the effort to stay connected. As the evening in Chicago begins to slow down, something subtle but important starts to unfold between Daniel and Emily. The music softens, people begin to leave in small groups, and conversations that once filled the space gradually fade. This is usually the moment when casual interactions come to an end. But for some people, it's the moment where something more begins. Because when there is genuine interest, the connection doesn't naturally fade with the environment. It looks for ways to continue. And this is where the final layer of silent communication becomes clear. Emily doesn't rush to leave with the others. Instead, she lingers. At first, it seems unintentional. She checks her phone, adjusts her jacket, looks around casually. But then she turns back to Daniel and continues the conversation, even though there's no longer a social reason to do so. This is not random. When someone is drawn to you, they create opportunities to extend the interaction. They don't always say, "I want to spend more time with you." Instead, they show it through small decisions, choosing to stay a little longer, finding one more topic to talk about, delaying their exit just enough to keep the moment alive. Emily even suggests grabbing a quick coffee from a nearby late-night spot before heading home. It's a simple idea. Nothing overly planned or intense, but it carries meaning. She's creating a private moment. Away from the group. Away from distractions. This is one of the clearest signs of growing connection. The desire to move from a shared environment into a more personal space. Not in a dramatic way, but in a natural, comfortable transition. Daniel agrees, but he doesn't overreact. He doesn't treat it like a major victory or put pressure on the situation. He stays grounded, understanding that connection builds best when it feels easy, not forced. As they walk together, something else becomes noticeable. Emily's energy. Earlier in the night, her behavior was calm and observant. But now there's a subtle shift. She seems more animated, more expressive. Her laughter comes more freely. She plays with her hair occasionally, adjusts her bracelet, and her movements feel slightly more restless, not in a negative way, but in a way that suggests heightened awareness. This is often misunderstood. Many people mistake this kind of behavior for nervousness or discomfort. But in reality, it's often the opposite. It's a sign of emotional engagement. When someone feels excited, slightly vulnerable, and fully present at the same time. This kind of energy cannot be faked easily. It's a natural response to connection. At the coffee shop, the conversation continues effortlessly. There are pauses, but they don't feel awkward. There's eye contact, but it doesn't feel forced. Everything flows in a way that feels balanced. This is where patterns become undeniable. Daniel reflects, even if only briefly, on everything that has happened throughout the evening. The consistent eye contact, the small natural touches, the open body language, the shift in tone and deeper conversation. And now the effort to create more time together. Individually, each of these signals might seem small, but together they form a clear picture. And this is the most important lesson of all. Real connection is not about isolated moments. It's about patterns that repeat and reinforce each other over time. Too many people look for certainty in a single sign. They ask, "Does this mean she likes me?" after one glance or one conversation. But that's not how human behavior works. Meaning comes from consistency, from repeated actions that point in the same direction. As the night comes to an end, Emily smiles and says she had a great time. She doesn't make a dramatic statement or define what the connection means. She simply expresses appreciation and leaves the door open for future interaction. And that's enough. Because real interest doesn't need to be forced into words. It shows itself clearly to those who are paying attention. Now, here's where responsibility comes in. Understanding these signals is not about gaining control or trying to influence someone's feelings. It's about awareness. It's about recognizing when someone is opening up and responding with respect and authenticity. The strongest individuals are not the ones who try to manipulate connection. They are the ones who understand it, value it, and build on it naturally. Daniel doesn't rush to label what happened. He doesn't overthink it or try to predict the future. He simply recognizes that something genuine has begun, and he allows it to develop at its own pace. That mindset is what makes the difference. Because when you approach connection with patience and clarity, you remove pressure from yourself and from the other person. You create space for something real to grow. And that's the ultimate goal. Not to chase signals, not to force outcomes, but to understand the silent language that has always been there. Eye contact, body language, tone of voice, attention, energy. These are the building blocks of connection. They tell a story that words often cannot. So the next time you find yourself in a similar situation, don't rush to interpret everything immediately. Don't look for guarantees or absolute answers. Instead, observe. Notice patterns. Stay present. And when you see those patterns forming, when the signals align and repeat, trust what you're seeing. Because in the end, the most meaningful connections don't begin with grand declarations. They begin quietly, through moments that feel natural, through signals that can't be forced, through energy that speaks before words ever do. And when you learn to recognize that, you don't just understand attraction, you understand people.